Tipping at Apple stores? Tunnels under Las Vegas? Orbital delivery? This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Go to hellofresh.com/MacVoices16 and use code MacVoices16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. Today's MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Kolide ensures only secure devices can access your cloud apps. It's zero trust, tailor-made for Okta. Book a demo today at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This MacVoices live panel wraps up the session with their thoughts on a union demand of tips being allowed in the Apple Store, and we talk about the activities of two of Elon Musk's other companies. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. We've got a couple other happily smaller things, I think, to get to. This one treads dangerously close to politics. So we're going to walk right up to the line. We're not going to cross it. We're not going to step on it. And that is this idea that Apple Store customers could be asked to tip employees if the unionized stores get their way. Anybody have any feelings about this? Would you find this an acceptable thing? Would you want to do it?
No. Absolutely not.
Tell me how you really feel, Webb.
Tipping, or the word tip, is an abbreviation to ensure promptness. And it's generally, like I said, used in a more of a restaurant setting. You get good service at a restaurant, you reward your server for that. It's not tipping. This is a gratuity. It was very interesting. I was looking at of our encyclopedia for everything, Wikipedia, and what they talked about gratuities before. And it was very interesting. They gave a study as an example of an attractive person would get tipped more than a less attractive person. They were talking about the discriminatory nature of offering a gratuity, which I thought was interesting. Apple will never do this. I think I read here again. I think it was in Dan Morin maybe said it. This is a bargaining ploy. They put it out there knowing that they were never going to get it, but they can say that they backed off of it. So showing the union that we're great guys, so we don't insist on everything that we ask for. So I think it's a bad idea, and like I said, I don't think Apple would ever move to allow gratuities in an Apple store, or then they'd have to start pooling them to all the employees. And how do you distribute those? It'd be just a big mess. So yeah, I think it's a bad idea, and I think everybody knows it.
Eric?
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. I would look at it as all of the problems of I would consider it a bribe. You go into an Apple store, you're talking to an Apple genius about some problem. That person or their manager can determine whether or not your device gets replaced under AppleCare or not replaced under AppleCare. And, oh, yeah, here's this tip for the tip jar. Yeah, we'll replace that. No problem. I mean, I see all kinds of issues with it. I have no problem with a union going in, negotiating, getting higher salaries for all of the workers, better conditions, whatever. And I would hope that Apple would provide that. But I expect the Apple Store to pay their employees enough that tipping wouldn't be a required component. I just think it's too dangerous and would lead to too many problems where it would get abused, even unintentionally.
So both of you have kind of alluded to the idea that this would be quote unquote required. And first of all, I agree with both of you. I hate this idea, but how do you require somebody to tip?
You
How
add
do you-
tipping as an expected part of your business. Now
Yeah,
it's required. That's
The Bahamas has mandatory tipping. It's just added on to any bill that you have in the Bahamas. So there are other countries that do it. On the other hand, a long time ago, I got to go to Japan as a guest of Matsushita, or Panasonic as we know them. And I had a problem in the hotel getting a computer to connect. A gentleman came up to the room and gave me a cable, and I tried to give them a tip. They wouldn't take it. It's against their culture. So there's also a cultural aspect to this that would be interesting. Now we're only talking about Apple Store in the United States, so it's very limited in what they're doing. But it's there's a cultural aspect to this that I think would also need to be addressed as well.
Well, and isn't it just one Apple Store?
Yeah.
so far?
And there's only one union, right? So if they get this, it would go throughout the rest of the union. So
Yeah. I mean,
They're not going to get it.
nope.
Well, I wouldn't think so either. And Webb's comment about it being a negotiating tactic, yeah, by all means, ask for something that you fully intend not to get, don't really want, don't expect to get, so you can give it up. I don't know. This just felt so wrong in so many ways. Eric, your point about doing a bribe. I mean, I've gone into Apple stores and I've gotten terrific service. I've gone into Apple stores and I've never had terrible service. I've had fair service at worst, but they've always been competent and so well trained. And in the waiter industry, in the dining industry, I think it makes a certain amount of sense because it has become the way it is. But this just would feel very strange to me. And right now, is there anything preventing? I mean, I've never done it, but is there anything preventing from someone who sat there and helped you work through a problem with you handing them a $5, $10 bill and saying, "Hey, thank you for the time"? Is that?
I'm assuming there's a company policy against that.
I don't know, Jeff,
but I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
I
not something I've ever considered.
But I got the impression that what this union was asking for was basically it would be put into the app. With Uber, you can just say add a tip, which is another reason why I think it's not going to happen, because Apple's not going to do that for one store. They're not going to change their whole systems.
Yeah. Brian?
I think one of the unintended consequences too might be the idea that some folks who would otherwise show up to the store and make their purchases, be able to talk to experts, be able to see the wide gamut of all the different options they can purchase and even try them out in store, would instead possibly feel persuaded to make their purchase online without having seen the product, use the product, and so forth, possibly leading to more poor purchasing decisions for those who may feel that they don't want a tip, they don't want to be asked about it, that type of thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it works, but I don't think this one will ever see the light of day.
And the last thing you want to do is put people in an uncomfortable position in a store, especially in a store where they're going to be spending a lot of money. And that whole concept of, well, do I tip? Do I not tip? How much do I tip? It's a weird set of rules. And it's not like a meal that's, $20 or $100. You're talking about thousands of dollars. And then, what are the tipping rules for that? Who knows? I think it's an uncomfortable position that could lead to all kinds of other difficulties, and it will be avoided.
Jeff?
Man. Well, how much time do we have? No. Okay. So This, of course, I'm with all of you. This is a bad idea. And my feeling is, if tipping is necessary, then there's another systemic problem we need to be looking at, which is how much people are being paid. And I'll look at the restaurant industry as an example. They have very successfully, for an incredibly long time, managed to make it totally acceptable to pay people below poverty wages, and then expect customers to just supplement that income. So if I go into an Apple store and I'm now expected to tip on the service that I get, do I need to start assuming that Apple cannot pay their employees a living wage or chooses not to? And what does that say about Apple as a company?
Yeah,
Well, Apple isn't suggesting this.
I know they don't have to suggest it. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it becomes a thing, it's now an Apple thing, regardless of whether or not Apple wanted it to be a thing. So, yeah, I think this totally plays into this being a tactic, and ultimately it's not going to happen. But the whole idea of having tip economies, I find incredibly distasteful on so many levels. And if you look at the history, and I'm not going to get into politics because you said no politics, go look at the history of tipping in the United States. And it will become very clear to you very quickly why I find the tipping economy so incredibly distasteful. Just pay people what they're worth. Just do it.
Jeff, that's a really interesting comment. Over the weekend, I had a situation where I was in a service situation, and this is probably unkind of me, and so I'll just acknowledge that right up front. But the individual delivering the service was not delivering the service. I mean, like, aggressively not delivering the service. Mm-hmm. And I thought, and they want me to pay this person a living wage for not doing their job. That's not very nice of me. I don't know what the circumstances were, but I have no reason to believe that the behavior I was observing was anything other than the norm for this individual. And yet, there they are. So
I totally get it. And that just, what you experienced is part of the whole systemic issue with tipping, because now it becomes a punitive tool for customers to use against employees. Now, granted, if you're getting crappy service, that needs to be addressed, and you should not get crappy service, and someone needs to make it right. But man, and that said, I'm always tipping at least 20% at restaurants, because part of my job as a diner in a restaurant is to supplement their income, and by God, I'm going to keep supplementing that income. But yeah, there's so many.
Regardless of the level of service you get at that restaurant.
If I'm getting incredibly poor service in the restaurant, I'm not going to address it with the tip. I'm going to address it with the manager, with the staff, whoever's the appropriate person to address it with.
Yeah,
and it will get taken care of. At which point, it will be appropriate to leave a tip. It may not be for the person who started serving me, but it'll certainly be for the person that's actually taking care of me. And there I am, being part of the systemic problem of using tipping as a punitive tool.
And part of the issue, and I agree with you, part of the issue, especially in restaurants these days, especially what you might call a family restaurant, to give it a general name, the person who's taking your order is generally not the person who's bringing the food to you. Okay.
Right.
And so there's a real dynamic in that too. But the other question I have, and you talked about 20%, and I'm generally 20%. If I'm really happy, I'll go 25.
Sure.
But I don't see me tipping $250 on a $1,000 iPhone. I just don't see
I'm
it.
with you.
Yeah.
And Webb, I will even go so far as if I'm in a restaurant and they discount something, like there's a local restaurant that I go in and I order my meal and a beer, and they will give me my drink for free just because I'm a good customer and I'm not a jerk, I guess. Or they know it's going to keep me coming back in. Just give me free liquor. I do the math and figure out what my bill would be had I paid for the drink. And then I do my 20% on that because I don't want to screw these employees out of part of their pay.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. The people that are working in restaurants are very underpaid. And if I'm getting average to above average service, I'm going to tip very well, because it's not necessarily the person who I'm paying. It's not necessarily his or her fault. So, but I'm not going to pay a tip for my iPhone. Although generally I get those online and they just get delivered to my office, so I'm not going to tip the UPS guy either. So,
right, yeah,
except at Christmas.
I totally get it. Yeah. But I bet if you bought online with in-store pickup, if the tipping was a thing, when you went to pick up your phone, the expectation would be that you tip on them giving you the product you ordered online.
If they bring it out to the car to me and have it already set up for me, then I'd probably consider tipping. But if they're just going to hand me the box, thanks.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I'm planning on taking you to a Kansas City barbecue restaurant, and I'll be tipping handsomely on your behalf. So,
it's I have family members that I know when we all go out to eat, I need to watch closely because they'll insist on paying the bill, but they don't tip or they tip horribly. And so I need to figure out what the bill is so that I can actually leave a tip and do it discreetly so that that it doesn't create a scene. Yeah. Anyhow, I am so looking forward to when we go out and have barbecue together. We're going to have an epic time.
Absolutely.
I want to join you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Really. Jeff, it's interesting, though, to hear you talk about tipping almost being weaponized against the server. The way I grew up, tipping was you worked for a tip. You tried to go the extra mile. You tried to earn the tip, as opposed to have it being an expected thing. And so to hear you flip it around is really interesting. I've got to process that a little. I'm not quite. I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just not sure how I feel about that, as opposed to having it expected and weaponized against the employee versus as an incentive for the employee to do a good job. The person I was talking about earlier over the weekend clearly was not working for, much of anything. And in my view, didn't deserve anything, because not only were they not doing a great job, they weren't even doing a good job. So, there are two different ways to slice it.
I agree with you. I think our culture has shifted from what it was, which is it has shifted from what it became, which was you work for the tip and then you're rewarded. And now it's the employer can get away with paying less because it's expected that you tip. And so we are just supplementing the employee's income without the employer taking a hit on their pocketbook.
Yes.
Based on comments Jeff made in the chat, I just did a Google search of history of tipping in the United States. I won't say what I found, but I recommend it. It was pretty eye-opening. I was not aware of some of the stuff that was in there.
It's just horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible.
Not surprised.
So there are a lot of small kind of coffee sandwich shops to switch to a model where there's no tippings. All the employees get paid more, and they just stay at the top of their menu. Our menu prices are a little higher than you might expect, but there's no tipping, and that's why. And that seems to work. I guess my other view on it is if you go into a place where there is tipping and they need the tipping to hit minimum wage, I feel like I'm going to eat or drink something. I'm not going in to be a manager. I don't want to be working trying to determine, is this person doing what they're supposed to be doing or not doing? I'm just going to eat, and I want to make sure they get paid appropriately for my being able to go and have somebody else bring food out to me. If I don't like their service, I'm either not going to come back again, or I'm going to talk to the manager about my experience and have them deal with it. Sort of a weird way of looking at it, but that's kind of how I try and adjust it. And I agree, Chuck. Yeah, it always used to be thought of as, if the person's doing the work, give them extra money. It doesn't work that way now. Economically, it doesn't work out that way. And the way it's set out, you can't survive your shift if you don't get extra, whether you do a good job or not. I mean, how many times has there been a screw up in the kitchen where the food is just terrible? It's not the fault of the server. The server can get it to you quickly. Everything else, they come back, they comp you for the meal, they comp you for dessert, they give you something else. You get a bill that's $6, but they did $75 worth of food to your table. I'm gonna tip on the full original value, not what I got comped because the kitchen screwed up. Although I might not go back again.
I'm not sure, but I think Eric just called me old.
I mean, I guess I spent a bunch of time talking to people who work as servers and bartenders and recently, and because I kind of would have been, would have had your viewpoint not that long ago, but in talking and hearing their experiences, it just either go to a spot that has higher prices and pays other people, or just consider that part of going out to eat is to making sure that whoever's serving you gets paid well. And if there's a problem, it gets handled a different way. It's a weird shifting of responsibility. I'm not particularly happy with it, but I feel better at the end of the day. Not quite as guilty. Somebody's not, going to be able to eat at the end of the night.
Yeah, good point. MacVoices is supported by Kolide at kolide.com/MacVoices. Clicking on the wrong link can cause you plenty of headaches if it's just you. But if it's your company, the possibility of clicking a wrong link is multiplied by the number of users, right along with the headaches. Your users don't mean to create a problem, but they have other things on their priority list. That's why Kolide works so well for Okta users. You can get your entire fleet to 100% compliance. If a device isn't compliant and tries to log in, it can't. The user is provided with the information on what needs to be done. If they do it, great. If not, they're blocked. Immediate, helpful device compliance that secures your company. Without Kolide, there's nothing to stop an unsecure device. With Kolide, unsecure devices don't have a chance to cause issues. And this is all built to work seamlessly with Okta. Zero trust architecture and 100% device compliance. That means fewer support tickets and less frustration all around. Just what the doctor ordered. Visit kolide.com/MacVoices to learn more or book a demo. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com/MacVoices. Kolide.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for supporting MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by HelloFresh. Go to HelloFresh.com/MacVoices16 and use the code MacVoices16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. Tired of the same old dinners? Stuck in a recipe rut? Take a bite out of something new with 40 recipes to choose from weekly. With options to please even the pickiest eaters, you'll always find meals everyone at the table will enjoy. Get farm-to-table quality with every HelloFresh box. HelloFresh's seasonal ingredients are picked at peak ripeness and travel from the farm to your doorstep in less than 7 days for fresh flavors in every bite. Sound expensive? Nah. HelloFresh is more convenient than grocery shopping, but did you know it's cheaper too? It's also 25% less expensive than takeout. Go to hellofresh.com/MacVoices16 and use the code MacVoices16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/MacVoices16 and use the code MacVoices16 to score 16 free meals plus free shipping. Find out just how convenient and just plain good HelloFresh is. Thanks to HelloFresh for supporting this week's Mac Voices. Hey, we're out of time, but there's one I can't not bring up. Webb, just let's listen to them howl. Elon Musk's Boring Company will now build a 65-mile tunnel network underneath Las Vegas.
This is news. He's been talking about this for years.
Yeah, but they finally got approval. It's now officially approved.
Okay.
This is the most inefficient subway taxi hybrid I've ever seen.
We'll see.
I took it. It wasn't too bad.
I mean, it's cool and fun, but just call it what it is. This is a Disneyland ride for grown-ups in Vegas.
Oh, I get
One
it.
among many.
One among many.
Right.
And if you're going to do it, this is the place to do it.
Yeah. But that Vegas desperately needs to connect the entire strip and to the airport. It just never.
Maybe if the taxi lobby hadn't shut down all of the growth for the monorail, this wouldn't have been necessary. But you're right. There needs to be something that more efficiently connects everything together.
It's a lot of walking in the Vegas.
I think it's going to be just interesting how this really plays out. I mean, Jeff, I see your point right now because we've, I know David's done it. I've done the system that's under the convention center to move between halls, and it works pretty darn well in spite of having a lot of traffic. Now, it's a lot smaller scale, and it's not automated yet. But if they can figure out a way to take the Teslas to the next level in a closed environment like this, where you don't have to worry about everything that's going on out there in the world, then maybe they can make it work. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see.
I agree. I have not bothered to do any research because ultimately, whatever, it's all good. Has anyone done any research into figuring out what electric subway system under the convention center and throughout the rest of the area would cost compared to what they're doing at the Boring Company?
No,
I've not.
I mean, I have no idea.
I've not.
No.
So I just wanted to listen to Jeff scream when we mentioned Elon Musk.
At least I laughed because
You did.
Because my laughing part is I don't believe this will be completed.
His track record, no.
Well, but there are a lot of people that didn't believe he would get it done under the convention center or over to Resorts World, David. So
that's true.
He did that.
But everyone can have a fluke like that.
Yeah.
And maybe in a few years, I'll be sitting here saying, "Wow, you pulled it off, and it works really well."
This is one of those things that I wish I could remember where I heard it, but I just heard it in the last couple of days. The percentage, and I'm not going to quote a percentage, but a high percentage of what makes it to orbit now is on SpaceX, more than pretty much anybody else. Now you can check that and see if I'm right, see if I misheard it, but I don't think so, because it really turned my head that SpaceX is doing that much. So take it just as food for thought. Hey, we're way over time. We're going to get out of here. Let folks know where they can find all of you. This has been a really, really great discussion. Thank you all. I think everybody participated, and I love the fact that we can have conflicting views and still laugh about things. Jeff.
I'm looking up who's sending most into space, not because I'm doubting you, but because I'm genuinely interested in which companies actually are sending the most up. And at least as of 2021, SpaceX was leading the pack. Anyhow, yeah, I just find that the whole commercial spaceflight market to be absolutely fascinating.
No, I agree,
I do
Jeff.
too.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why, frankly, I think a lot of us, and I'm guilty of that to some degree, think of it as just, some of Elon's spectacular successes and failures in the reusable rockets and all. I had no idea that it had become that big a business, a routine business, if you will. So.
Of course, a significant amount of the payloads are his own, Starlink.
I don't care what they are. I don't care what they are. They're getting them up there.
Well, I think that is could be, it's not irrelevant because, that's not necessary, it remains to be seen whether that's a money-making business or just subsidizing the launches.
But just the fact that they have the capability of moving that much stuff to orbit.
They definitely have a lot of capability to move stuff to orbit. And they have, I think some of those boosters have been launched 15 times now.
Yeah. And they keep landing on those little floating pads. Holy crap.
I love that. That's my favorite part. A little stick flying down and landing on a target. I could watch that every day.
I agree. You feel like you're watching something out of a 1950s science fiction movie, and it's real.
Yeah. Hey, Chuck, I found you an article from Ars Technica from the end of December 2022 about the companies launching the most. And number one was SpaceX. Number two, United Launch Alliance, which doesn't surprise me because ULA launches a metric bucket load of stuff into space. So SpaceX or ULA, either one of those as number one wouldn't surprise me at this point.
But SpaceX is the only one that's launched a human and been able to take a human into space.
Yes.
Okay.
I think predecessors of ULA have essentially.
No, SpaceX is the only one other than NASA.
They've made rockets that NASA used.
Not for human spaceflight.
Somebody made like Geminis and
that wasn't ULA.
I think it was a predecessor company. ULA
okay, how about,
was,
can I narrow it down to this century?
No.
No.
We're going to continue this in After Dark.
After Dark.
Okay.
Yes.
Need to be there. So I'm going to flip it around this time. Webb, I'm going to give you first shot. Where can folks find you or connect with you?
Well, I'm going to push Jeff's buttons, and I can say that you can find me at Bixby at twitter.com.
That doesn't push my buttons. I respect your choice to hang out on a sadly dying platform.
And on Mastodon, it's at Bixby at twit.social.
Thank you, Webb. Jeez, sadly dying.
I am sad it's dying.
Jim Rea, you're not sadly dying. Where can folks find you?
Sure I am.
Well, I hope not.
You think I'm not going to? It's just timing, Chuck.
Yeah.
I can show you some numbers on that if you're interested. So.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, great, Webb.
Where are we going here?
Yeah,
really. It's going downhill fast. Jim, where can folks connect with you?
So yeah, you can sadly not find me on Twitter or Blue Sky or Nostr. But you can find me on the internet web at provue.com, PROVUE. and on the Mastodon part of the interweb tubes at ProViewJim at techhub.social. And everybody join Mastodon. It's great.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff Gamet, I'll give you a tip if you'll tell us where folks can connect with you.
Oh, great. Now the pressure's on, because if I don't do it, I'm going to get punished. Okay. So where you can find me when I'm not hanging out with Webb having awesome barbecue, at least in my mind for today. On the socials, I'm most active on Mastodon and Instagram, JGamet on both. And then there's the long show list, starting with you letting me on every single week. And then on Thursdays, Dave keeps letting me on In Touch with iOS. Then I'm still doing the interim host thing on the British Tech Network for the Big Show on Fridays and the Mac Show. No, Big Show on Thursdays, Mac Show on Fridays. And then Brian Chaffin and I are doing the Context Machine. And then other stuff happens along the way too.
Great. Good job, Jeff. Good job.
Did I earn my tip?
Your tip is
Yes.
your tip is Seabiscuit in the third race at Pimlico.
Oh, great. You just gave me a 50-year-old tip.
I was going to say.
What the hell?
Well, I didn't say it was going to be a good tip, but it's a tip.
See, this is part of the systemic problem.
Jeff, you take Apple Pay? I can. Never mind.
Yes, I do.
Oh, jeez. Eric Bolden, I'm hoping next week you'll show up with a different flower, but until then,
Maybe a shooting star. That would be cool.
there you go.
Yeah. But in the meantime, you can find me at EA Bolden at techhub.social on Mastodon, where there are other flower pictures occasionally. Mostly tech stuff, though.
Okay.
Hey, Eric. Nice diamond.
That's the thing.
Oh, boy. So, Brian, we're going to give you a challenge. I want you to find for next week's show a brighter shirt.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
Okay. You may have to
Your
plug
sunglasses.
it in, but
Yeah.
Where can folks connect with you?
Best place is probably on Mastodon, Brian8944 at mastodon.cloud. But I'm also on Twitter, also Brian8944.
Good. Thanks so much for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Last but absolutely not least, Mr. David Ginsburg. David, thanks so much for being here. Where can folks connect with you?
Thanks for having me. You can find me at In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com. I am on YouTube at youtube.com/intouchwithios. I am on here on Tuesdays on the Mac Show on the British Tech Network on Fridays, as well as I am on Mastodon at DaveG65 and Mastodon.club. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices Live. We have this much fun every Tuesday night starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever time that is, wherever you are. We'd love to have you join us and have as much fun too. YouTube.com/MacVoicesTV is where you can do that. We will see you next Tuesday. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.